And I'm seeing a question that's coming up here. It's Ramvaz asks, how did you get the domain, and how much do you think it's worth now?
Oh, I like the second question. So here's the question. Here's the answer. When I wanted to create an MP3 site, a website, to put my search form, I said, well, let's go create a site. What's the best name? How about mp3.com? Damn, it's taken.
Yeah.
It had been registered, but nobody was using it. So I sent an email to the guy who had registered it, and I said, hey, would you sell this domain name? And he writes back, well, what are you going to do with it? Yeah. And at the time, I wasn't really sure. I'm like, oh, it's an MP3 information site. And he writes back, what's MP3? Now,
how did he have the URL?
Exactly. I mean, this is before the domain squatter era that we live in, where people register every small word combination. Well, it turns out the initials in his name were M and P.
Okay.
And so he had registered it. At the time, when you registered a domain name, they would assign you a username, and they had assigned him the username MP3, and so he registered it completely as a whim, had no idea what MP3 was. So I bought it for $1,000, which, one of the things that irks me is that people go, oh, you were so lucky to get it. And I always say, well, you could have bought it for $1,000, and I wasn't rich at that time, and $1,000 for a domain name, I was driving a beater car, and I had a new baby, and I had no curtains and no furniture in my house. So $1,000 was a lot of money, but I thought this was a good investment, and it turned out to be a good investment. What is it worth today? Well, I mean, it's a great name. It's short. It stands for digital music. But I bet no one watching your show has been to MP3 in years. Right. There are a lot of good domain names. Where's music.com? When was the last time you were at that one? About songs.com? Yeah. Tunes.com? No, never. Right. So you could have something behind the domain name for it to have value. So could you sell MP3, which is owned by CBS today? Okay. Could you sell it today for $500,000? Maybe. But mp3.com wasn't MP3 because it was a good name. It was because of what we did for the consumers. That really is what made it.
And because the format became a big media story, I guess you were a large part of helping create that big media story. And I guess it's really a trend, which is maybe the business model of packaging up a bunch of songs, forcing us to buy those as a bundle and paying a lot of money, and people didn't want to, and now you could get them for free, kind of drove that, right?
Oh, sure. MP3, I mean, what's so amazing is that if you look back in time, the experts thought mp3.com was a terrible name. Right. And their logic was, well, naming your company after a file format is going to date you. That's going to be like Betamax.com. Right. What they missed, and what I saw because I had a front row seat, was MP3 had nothing to do with audio compression. Right. It had everything to do with the changes that were happening to the digital music. So whether it was the debundling of the CD, as you're talking about, or the ability to make custom CDs, or to email songs or download songs, that's what MP3 came to stand for.
And that's what it stood for, yeah.